revoltmedia.com.
What's up, guys? And what's up, guys? How are you doing today? My name is Bucky Dillon, host of the Liberty Revolt with my co-patriot, Kevin LaRusso. And today we want to talk about propaganda.
Yep.
Because it's everywhere. And it's
is.
Inevitably everywhere because it is a feature of media. Almost anything you watch, even from us, to some extent is designed to get you to think in a specific way, to behave in a specific way. What your job is to determine, are the people who are giving me my media doing so with genuine intent? Are they doing so because they want you to make informed decisions, or are they doing so to protect their own power and their own agenda? So hopefully we'll be able to disclose some interesting information with you. We have a great guest today who actually spent 8 years working for Chinese state-run media. Amani, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Good. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So if you could just, in 3 minutes, give people an idea of who you are and what your story is.
Okay. Well, my name is Amani, and I was born in China, and I was raised there. I lived there for 31 years before I came to America. So I was born about a year after Mao died, so I never truly knew hunger, physical hunger, because as soon as Mao died, people started to have food again. But I knew, I experienced another kind of hunger, that is the hunger of mind, which is, I didn't truly start experiencing that until I started working for this state-run media outlet called, China Radio International, which is like a multilingual radio station that's like a massive propaganda machine, subordinate to China's Central Propaganda Ministry. And I majored in Arabic in college. That's where my name came from, Amani.
Mumtaz. Mumtaz Jadid.
Thanks. So that's where my name came from. It's obviously not a Chinese name. It's an Arabic name. But anyway, so after I graduated college, I was admitted to this radio station. I thought my dream of becoming a journalist and a radio show host and everything had come true. But very soon, I became very disillusioned because, we were told immediately that we were the tongue and the throat of the party. That in Chinese literally means the mouthpiece of the party. We were not the brain of the party. So we were literally told we were not allowed to think for ourselves. The party was the brain of the nation. The party's job is to think. Our job is to say what the party wants us to say in a better way, make it more appealing to the public.
Sounds about right, yeah. So you were working for them. Was there something that happened while you were there that made you realize, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was?
Yeah, first of all, when I first started, they put me on the news team, and I thought I would be going out reporting news, right, and talking to people and writing articles. Nothing like that. Articles were already written for us. And so our job was just to translate it into Arabic and broadcast it to the Middle Eastern region. And the news were all the same every day. The 30 minutes long, a news report, entailed about 15 minutes of praising the party, painting China with a great, with rainbow colors, showing how happy people were, showing how the leaders of China were busy working for the people, and conferences or like a massive steel production growth, somewhere, or massive crop harvest somewhere. And then the second part is all about like how the rest of the world was just all in misery and pain and natural disasters and run poorly. So like every day, that was the pattern every day. And for about a year and a half, I just got so bored. I was like, why is this news?
Yeah.
Why are we trying so hard to convince the world we're happy and we're a great country? We were like, I grew up believing, socialism was that's what we were told. Socialism is the most advanced system in the world. The rest of the world were suffering. So if we were already living example of the success of socialism, why do we have to try so hard to convince the world that we're doing great? And at the same time, I did not feel that happy. I was overworked and underpaid.
Yeah.
And, I was like, if I was so happy, then, and I would have said that. But now I don't feel happy, but I'm telling the world we're doing great. And that just started to, create this contradictory and conflicting feeling in my own mind. And then after that, I asked to be like switched to be on a culture and music show, and I got granted. I was very happy. That was the only happy time. I was very happy because I loved music and culture. So I just poured my heart and mind into it. I did so well. I had fans praising me.
You had a great show, I heard.
Yeah, I had a great show. And then about a year and a half after that, my supervisor pulled me aside and said, Amani, you've been doing such a great job. Our fans love you. We're going to have to cut your pay down by a third. I was shocked. I was like, well, did I do something wrong? I was like, you just told me I'm doing a great job. And she was like, no, you're doing very well. And that's why we have to cut your pay down, because the old comrades who have worked for this department for many, many years are paid less than you are. Their shows.
But we will get back to it because after that was kind of the thing that kicked it off. When we get back, we'll go in a little bit more on that one. You're listening to Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC. Yeah. So you see how it kind of like it'll just fade in on there. Yeah.
So we are still live on the live stream, so you can wave to everybody right here. What's up, Be the Change? Thanks for allowing us to commandeer your platform.
For just a little bit. If you guys have any questions for Amani that you would like us to ask her during the break, please submit them through the comment section, and during the break we can get to them. Now we only have about 2 minutes. Did you cut the ads out of this one?
I did not cut the ads out, because sometimes something that will happen is if you cut ads out, the system will be like, oh, the timing's off. So we need to interject some commercials here. And I don't think our new sound guy will know exactly what to do in that situation. That's fair. But guys, thanks so much for hanging out and putting up with the fact that we are not your usual Be the Change hosts, but we hope you enjoy us all the same. Again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns for ourselves or our guests, hop in that comment section, let us know. And if you really want to help us out, do us a favor, unlike, unsubscribe, don't hit the bell, don't get the notifications. In fact, please dox us on Antifa blog forums. It really does help our competitors. Thank you.
We appreciate Be the Change letting us on here. If you guys want to support us on the radio station as well, go ahead and check out 1360khnc.com. We're here every Saturday from 5 to 6.
And we live stream on Facebook every Monday at 8 p.m. Central Mountain Time.
Yes.
And every Friday at 8 p.m. Central Mountain Time.
No. See, Central Time and Mountain Time are different times, Dylan. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Central Time is an hour ahead of us. Yeah. That's Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I know
so
that.
10 Eastern. 10 o'clock Eastern time is what we're going to start using. Eastern time only.
Why would we use Eastern time? We don't live in the East.
I know, but it's easier for everyone else because you just subtract. Everybody knows how many hours to subtract from Eastern time on their own time.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Apparently not. Oh. Hello and welcome back to the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC.
Facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media. YouTube.com/Liberty Revolt.
We are joined today by Amani, a former member of the Chinese Communist media empire, if you will. And she was just, before the break, she was just telling us about how she had been moved from the news portion over into the entertainment and culture portion of the Chinese media. And because she had had a very successful show, her reward was having her pay deducted and distributed out to other members within the party. I assume that didn't go over too well with you personally, and that kind of led you on the way to wanting to get out.
No, that did not at all. I was shocked because, at the time I really, my show was 50 minutes long, and the old comrades shows were 10 minutes long, and I was paid 5 yuan more than them per show. At the time, it was less than $1. So, and I had to work. I really worked my butt off to make that show what it was. I had fans walk into the radio station to talk to me. I was very proud of it. And then when my supervisor told me, we have to cut your pay down because you're the old comrades were complaining you were paid too much for this show, and I broke down. I was I told her, if you think I'm not, I will just quit. And then she says, no, how can you think that? How can you be so selfish? How can you be so, how can you lack such spirit of sacrifice? You young people have lost the spirit of sacrifice. These old comrades, they have, dedicated their lives to our broadcasting cause for decades and decades. It's time. It was all just meaningless words. Yeah. And I got so angry, but after that I couldn't do anything because, she was the supervisor. She decides. Yeah, she gets to decide. So after that, I just started why do I even bother? I still love the show. I didn't want to lose it, or I didn't want to make it, really poor, but I just started slacking off, and repeating shows, just try to.
And I'm sure they didn't increase your pay because your show got worse, did they?
No, they did not. Yeah, they did not. And that's the thing. That's when I hear people here talk about equity, equal outcome. That's what happened to me.
You lived it because.
Yeah. Yeah, it was devastating. It's people here, they think equity means they're going to take from the old and rich and give it to the young and poor. That's not how it works. In a society, they will always take from those who produce the most.
Yep.
And so who would produce the most? Young people, the most energetic. And then they would take it. Yeah. And so, that was just devastating for me. And after that, I kind of just felt, this is not what I want. This is not what I signed up for. And I felt I needed to leave China someday. And so in secret, I applied for some schools in England. I wanted to just leave China and go abroad and study. And I got admitted to some schools in England. And I tried to apply for a passport in 2002, and I was denied because I didn't get work, approval from my work organization. So I couldn't. So after that, I got very depressed for a long, long time. I felt like I'm going to continue living, but I was suicidal. But I thought about, I thought about jumping off the platform at the subway, and I just figured, okay, I'll just hang on a little bit more and see if I could actually get out of here.
So what brought you to the U.S. and how did you get interested in freedom fighting?
Mm-hmm. Well, I met my American husband in Beijing in 2005. And what really moved me about him is that he was the one who taught me that, without diversity of opinions, without a variety of voices allowed in society, in the media, in the public platform, there can never be freedom of speech. And I grew up believing, the party should lead the public opinion. I took that as a matter of course, but it was actually my American husband who actually taught me that freedom of speech means is the foundation of all other freedoms. human beings have their own minds. Everybody is different. Everybody is an individual. Everybody has different lives. So they have different opinions about everything. And if they're not allowed to speak to that opinion out, it's not freedom of speech. And
right.
We're
all looking at the world through a keyhole because we have so much information out there. There's so much history. You could never know all of the history, right? You could never know everything there is to know, but we can know a lot. And it's important that we all combine our keyholes, no matter how messy and ugly it may be, but we all combine our perspectives to find out what is true. And we can't trust somebody else to do it for us because they absolutely have their own agenda. So this is where propaganda comes in.
Yeah.
So what is propaganda, Kevin, and how is it implemented?
So propaganda in basic terms is basically when the whatever regime is in control, they want to have a narrative that is understood and pushed forth by their people. The propaganda is going to be whatever kind of media tools or whatever kind of education tools, whatever state-sanctioned official media is being produced, whatever the medium, the propaganda is going to end up being whatever is going to line up perfectly with what the state wants. It's going to come directly from the state's mouth, and it is going to line up with the state's platform, with the state's agenda, and with the state's interests, and it is going to compel support for whatever the state is.
Define the state.
The state is the government. In this case, the Chinese Communist Party. So we bring that up today because you came from what is the propaganda arm of China, and I'm sure when you came over to America, you were like, oh my gosh, you're not seeing the propaganda everywhere. It feels, you came post 9/11, so there was a lot of the patriotism, and that there was some propaganda tied in with that, but I would assume it was nowhere near the level of Chinese Communist Party. I ask you though, and I think we're about to end up going to break here, but we'll get into it a little bit beforehand. When you look at the American media landscape now, do you think it's gotten closer to what the Chinese model has?
Yes, I have been shocked by what I have read or what has happened, especially on the big social media platforms in the last couple, 18 months. I mean, when I first landed in America, I felt the kind of freedom I had never felt before. I was like blown away. Like, I want to tell this story. Like, first week, we landed in San Francisco, and we went into a small shop, and I saw a flyer from Falun Gong. You guys know Falun Gong? It's a banned cult in China. No one in China is even dares to utter that word Falun Gong out loud. So like I saw that flyer promoting Falun Gong. I was blown away. For the first time in my life, I realized I could actually say that word out loud. For the first time in my life, I was blown. I trembled. I literally trembled when I held that flyer. And of course I got into all this information about Tiananmen massacre that's completely banned in China and all that. I cried for months because this is information I had no idea.
So they were really truly effectively able to
block out everything.
Those kind of things entirely.
Oh yeah, there's the Great China, the Great Firewall that we call it, that blocks out everything that the government does not approve. So I mean, for me, it's like at the time I was like, this is what freedom feels like. I watched the media. They were reporting facts. They were critical of their governments, and I was like, wow, this is what I thought, what journalism would be, and it was. But in the last couple of years, especially the last 18 months, I started seeing posts being deleted, people being banned from social media. Like when Facebook got banned in China in 2009, I thought that was like very courageous of Facebook for not complying with Chinese laws.
Because Google did comply, didn't they?
Google left China in 2010. That was a move that they did that was applauded by all of us, Chinese dissidents. But then later, they started to go back. But that's why, at the time, I admired these big tech companies. I admired these big media outlets. New York Times, they did an article about Chinese leaders offspring all moving to America, exposing their own hypocrisy of bashing America all the time and while sending their children to America all the time. And I admired them at the time, and and then ever since, especially since COVID, it's like all of a sudden different voices are not allowed anymore. I was like, okay, it's like it's a pandemic, I get it. But you have to allow different opinions.
And we should be expecting that. I mean, I say all the time that being libertarian, being conservative means you are always playing defense all the time. So it's no surprise to me that it just feels like this nonstop wave. I was going to say that it's interesting what happens with our media here, because people don't realize that our media landscape is 90% dominated by 6 corporations. 6 companies, technically 5, because 2 of these companies were owned by the same people who now own equal stock in both of them. So, you could argue that it falls underneath 7. How many companies own all of our media and ISPs, internet service providers? I think there's 4 big internet service providers.
There's smaller ones for rural areas that'll have more local municipal style. But if you're talking about major metropolitan areas, every suburban area, it's basically 4 to 5 ISPs that are dominating it all. And just for context, back in about the 80s, it was about 30 different companies involved in the media landscape.
In the early 80s, it was about 50.
There was by
1992, it was about 24.
Yeah, and then by now it's about 5 or 6, like you said.
Right, those 6 companies: Comcast, NBC, Universal. That's one company. Disney, everybody's favorite family-friendly corporate Sith overlord. CBS, Viacom, News Corp, that's Rupert Murdoch's media empire, and AT&T basically own 90% of everything you see. And so much of the so-called independent media that we have are just people talking about what that with that media empire is talking.
And a lot of that independent media itself is also on only a couple platforms like YouTube, like Patreon, and like at this point maybe Rumble. So even they are being restricted on that level. So there is less than 10 companies that dominate basically every avenue to produce news media that you would dream of. And so it's created this landscape here in America where if at the drop of a hat there was a cabal of, if you want to go, a cabal of like bad people like the Illuminati, but that's just giving them a title kind of deal. There is the power that with 5 phone calls you could get the same message put out to basically 90% of America.
Right. It's 5. They would own more if it wasn't for antitrust laws. But what they've discovered is the next best thing to a monopoly is essentially having a monopoly between you and 5 of your friends.
Having collusion. It's an oligopoly.
And so many of these companies are owned by the same banks that finance them and finance their expenditures. So really, you have Goldman Sachs and Bank of America and BlackRock. It gets deep, guys.
But let's talk about the most important one.
This is why. Go ahead.
The most important one that's moving in is the Chinese state-owned media that is moving in. Tencent, that's moving into a lot of these different organizations. Tencent buying up sports teams, buying up video game companies, buying up movie production studios, and kind of
yeah.
So we might have to finish this towards the end of this upcoming break here. But I want to talk about how should you look at media when it's state-run? How should you look at media when it's lobbyist-run? And I want to draw comparisons to what we see with the jab and alternative therapeutics that are being ignored or discredited, including natural immunity. Coming up after the break on 1360 KHNC, Facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media, and Facebook.com/Be the Change. Thanks for hanging out. Okay, so we had a couple questions and comments during that segment from our live stream audience that they would like us to address. Question number 1. Tracy says, why you laugh? Why? Bad question? Question mark. Am I naive? She asked if we were going to China and are we helping China? Well, as a media organization, we are not. Although I will say one of us co-masters is fully employed in China right now. And that's why he's not doing as much content with us. He was genuinely concerned he might not be able to make it back. But rest assured, we are a dedicated China bashing media corporation.
Good for you guys.
I don't know if Bucky's ever going to be allowed to go back to see. It's a good reason to not go have to see your in-laws.
You know that they are going to search for Bucky.
Ooh.
They will come after all of us eventually. They came after Lily Tan.
Somebody else is concerned, and we have to be careful talking about alternative therapeutics, as we are on Be the Changes YouTube.
Don't use any of the hot words.
We're going to try our best not to use the hot words. Guys, I am notorious for accidentally using the hot words and getting kicked off of YouTube. So I'm going to let you lead that one.
Yeah. We're not going to say certain words. But I'm more concerned with just how they're handling it in general. So I'll lead in, and we'll just ask right away, what kind of tactics you're seeing being used here in America in regards to COVID that you saw similarly used.
State-run media versus
lobbyists,
so-called free market media. And how to look at both with a healthy level of skepticism, how to shape your skepticism to cater to, is this media being censored by Big Pharma, which wants to deny any publicity of their alternatives, or is this being censored by a government actor that wants to expand its ability to implement force and control?
Yep, I got you. I shall lead it. Was there any more questions, or was there...
that we have a lot of people who are celebrating Amani.
Thank you.
Think she's a great guest.
Awesome.
So, and someone who thinks she's pretty. So.
Oh, thank you.
By the way, how old are you?
I'm 43.
43, ladies and gentlemen. And she looks that young.
Yeah, no,
it's the makeup.
I look 43.
Yeah, I look 56.
I feel 43. So.
No, you look like 12.
Oh, look at you.
I mean that as a compliment.
Bucky. You're a small child.
Brent asked a question. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, she stated that she applied in secret. How hard is it to leave, or was it at the time?
Oh, very difficult. Very difficult.
How long did it take, do you think?
It took me...
We're coming back on.
No, we're coming back.
Brent, we'll hit you during the next commercial break.
Hello and welcome back to the Liberty Revolt. I am your host, Kevin. Next to me is Bucky, and joining us is Omani, coming straight from the Chinese propaganda wing. Just kidding. But yeah, so we're talking about propaganda today, and we're talking about, we're going to get into a little bit right now, America versus China when it comes to this stuff. So in America, we don't necessarily have the same state-run media that China has, right? The state, our government does not actually have the power to dictate directly.
Although it is influenced in how.
No, I'm going to get into that. So the government does not have direct influence where they can dictate what is said. However, what we have in America is basically a crony capitalist system wherein members of the government are supported by and support members in the media. They give kickbacks to each other. They build friendships wherein it's like, okay, I'm going to release this information to you, spin it in a good light kind of deal. And they end up making these dirty bargains. Additionally, you have lobbyists that come in and then buy your congressmen, your senators. And specifically with COVID, you have pharmaceutical lobbyists that came in. They bought these Congress people, and then these Congress people then weaponized the media in support of the pharmaceutical companies. Now,
and it's not just that the media was corrupted by the pharma company through the politicians. Big Pharma is one of the largest lobbyists of both our politicians and our media, and
it is happening directly as well.
And I want to talk about how that corresponds with these conversations around mandating federally for people to get the shot, and this effort to discredit any alternative
that does
natural immunity.
Yeah.
And so let's think about this. How did Big Pharma and the V come to be in the first place? Well, you had the government putting up large sums of money to Big Pharma to manufacture it. Now, what happens if all of a sudden it turns out that we have an existing alternative?
What was the most important thing the government did for the pharmaceutical companies? They removed liability. They made it so that even if the V's go bad, companies there is no repercussions. They removed the incentive to guarantee that they're going to work. Right? Because that's normally when you say a company is incentivized not to harm you, it's usually because there's a lot of money they're going to lose if they do. That is not the case anymore.
After funding the research and production of the shot and rushing it through the FDA on emergency use.
Yeah, we socialized the expense in producing it, and they privatized the profit that is going to come from it. So
now, and people think, well, there's no reason for someone not to go out and get the shot because it's free. Let me tell you guys, it's not free. Every single dose of that is being purchased by the government on your behalf from the pharmaceutical companies at a price that you have no idea. How much is the government spending per shot? Do you know?
So they cost $150 a piece, but right now, Pfizer, Moderna, and whoever the third one is, I forget. Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. Yeah. They're giving the government a fat discount down to $20 a dose.
And why is that? Because if the government can manage to mandate it, that means they're making all of that money per citizen of the United States. So we're talking 350 billion times the dollar amount.
350 million.
350 million.
Not
excuse me. Per dollar amount per United States citizen.
So and how do you, when you look at this, when you're observing this, what kind of similarities do you see between the Chinese state-run outlet and how the pharmaceutical companies have co-opted the American outlet?
Too many. This is my second round. I keep telling people I lived through SARS. SARS-1, COVID is SARS-2. In case you don't know, COVID's official name is SARS-CoV-2. I lived through SARS-1 in 2003, in Beijing. And it was exactly the same thing. At first, the government covered it up, told us, they knew it was happening in the South, and they told us nothing to report, nothing to see here, everything's fine. Until in May, I think 2003, the outbreak was just
they couldn't manage it anymore.
They couldn't cover it up anymore, and then they immediately came out. And they used it immediately, lockdown. We were not allowed to go out and take public transportation. And, they set up temperature screening machines in the front of our radio station. And they gave us masks to wear every day, 16 layers in each mask, 16.
How did they ask you to tailor the message to the people? Because you were a part of the party at the time. So how were you instructed to present it to the people?
I was coming to that. So as soon as they came out with it, big banners appeared on our work building. As long as you follow the Chinese Communist Party, SARS is nothing to be afraid of. And we were given directives directly from the Central Propaganda Ministry to guide the public opinions in these steps. I don't even remember, but there were pages and pages and pages of those directives pasted on our wall. So it's like not one not one step of deviation from party directives. So it's like this is a pandemic. We have come out to admit it. As long as you follow the party's procedures, you will be safe. People must follow the party's guidelines and not take matters in their own hands, because trust the party. The party has taken the people through so many hardships and difficulties in the past. People, put your faith and trust completely in the party, then you will all be safe.
I'm so confused. Are you talking about China or the Biden administration?
This is why I was, and then, of course, on TVs and radio stations, it's all propaganda. They're showing people who have recovered, they're showing big thumb up to the party, showing gratitude to the party, and telling the people, if you do as the party says, you can fight this thing just like me. And I got so disgusted at the time, and I thought it was like the most ridiculous thing in the world. And little did I know, about 17 years later, it happened again. And and last year I was just shocked when they started telling people that,
When it started to come up, was there a part of you that was like, oh, at least I'm in America now, so it's not going to be as bad?
Yes, absolutely. Because I followed it from the beginning, and I have a lot of Chinese friends. They follow Chinese news. So when it first came out in Wuhan, I was very worried. I was like, oh, poor Chinese people, because the government never learns. It's lessons. I'm like, they've been through the SARS, in 2003, and this time they did it again. They covered it up for 40 days before they couldn't cover it up, and then immediate lockdown, and people's lives were like, it was nothing to them. Like, they literally in Wuhan, they literally nailed, like they blocked the entrances.
They were cementing doors.
The doors of the people who were completely trapped inside with no food or resources. It was just, I was like, poor Chinese people. I'm like, oh, this is, it's lucky that I'm so glad I'm in America now. I'm so glad I don't have to live through that again. And then by March, I was like, what's going on? Okay, I was panicking too, at the time, because I lived through SARS. I didn't want to live through it again. I knew you could actually kill if you happen to be the unlucky ones.
But we'll get into how things changed after the break. You're listening to the Liberty Roll on 1360 KHNC.
And after the break, I'd like to hit you with CCTV headlines and get a one-word reaction.
Yeah. Well, so what was the question before the last break?
Okay, Brent's question. Man, thanks for hanging out with us.
Seriously, we appreciate it. During the break, this is one.
Okay.
It's a table mic, so it'll pick it all up easily. I think he asked, about the process of getting out and how long.
Right.
It was. It was like so.
You mentioned that you applied secretly. And what was the process for getting out of China like at the time?
Well, it was like, I applied for schools in England. That was pretty easy. I just sent materials and I was admitted. But then I had to go apply for a passport at the, I don't remember what it was called, the citizen entry and, like the bureau where you go to apply for passports, I had to lie about my ID card to borrow my house registration card, because everybody in China has a house registration card that basically records where you go, where you live. And without that, you cannot apply for passport. And mine, because I was working for the government organization, was kept in a collective, file by the ministry. So you can't get it out unless you lost your ID card. So I lied about my ID card. I went to the administration. I said, I lost my ID card. Can I borrow that? So they give it to me, and I used that. I went to the bureau for passport issuance, and I stood in line for about an hour, and I filled out all the forms. And I went to the front desk, and I showed my ID card and house registration card to her, and she was like, "No way! Are you kidding me? You don't have a stamp from your work organization."
Here you go.
Okay.
What's up, guys? I hope you guys are enjoying the show. Quick shout out to our newest advertiser, Serenity Painting.
Hey, you said it right.
Rivera. Serenity Painting, guys. But definitely keep an ear out for his commercial when you hear it coming out. give the guy your business because he really does share our
Wonderful
values,
painter.
share our mission, and he is a painter with integrity. So, Vincent, thank you so much for becoming a sponsor of 1360 KHNC.
Yeah. Well, so we were talking about before the break kind of how the American approach after March, we went into the pandemic and there was kind of like a healthy, reasonable suspicion about the disease. Like, we don't know how bad it is. And they came out with 2 weeks to slow the spread, which apparently has turned into, we are going to get to zero, whether you like it or not. So just tell me, like, when this was going on, what was going through your head? You've already lived through this before. So as you're seeing the narrative shift, what were you noticing as far as like silencing of dissent and basically how the government was trying to take control of the narrative?
Well, at first, I was panicking like everyone else. I figured, okay, the first thing to do is to control the virus, right? So, but after, like maybe 2 or 3 or 4 weeks, and I noticed that the shift has turned from, like, nobody's talking about China anymore.
Yeah.
Like this came from China. I knew, I can't say I knew it for sure.
In fact, you were xenophobic for mentioning China. You were the bad guy.
I was like, that's the true culprit. Why is nobody blaming China or holding China accountable?
That's Asian hate,
right? I was like, why is it racist to call it China virus when UK variant and Brazilian variant were all okay, but then suddenly, China virus is racist.
Well, it absolutely falls within the government's interest to conflate any criticism of anything they do with criticism of their constituents.
Yeah. So, I mean, you saw it like Trump it's because our media had turned into, if Trump says it, it's false mode. So like when he calls it the Wuhan flu, and my favorite was the Kung flu. That was my personal favorite.
Yeah, we called it Wuhan flu from the beginning. Everybody called it Wuhan flu inside China. Everybody called it Wuhan flu.
But like we were all there. We all watched the data come out and it was like, this isn't that dangerous. And so was there a point when you were just like, wait a second, they're going to start listening to the data at some point here?
Yes, I thought that. I mean, at the beginning, everybody was panicking and it was more serious at the beginning too, like especially when it was in Wuhan, it was actually pretty serious. But once it spread out, it's like the virus itself becomes more contagious, but, less deadly. And I look at the data, I was like, okay, this is not too bad. Maybe just let's still, take precautions and be careful and, social distance, whatever. And then very soon I started hearing rumors. Now it's become true that, they're going to put mask mandates, for people. Like, you have to wear a mask wherever you go. And I was like, okay, for a little bit. I just thought I was so naively thinking this is all just going to be temporary. It's like once it's under control, all of it will be lifted. People will be, back to normal. And then that never happens, and then add one variant after another. And now it's like people are talking about vaccine passport. I was like, oh, hold on a second. This is starting to feel a little bit like SARS, like as long as you follow the Chinese Communist Party, SARS is nothing to be afraid of. Now it's like, as long as you follow the CDC guidelines, then you're now killing grandma. Yeah. I was like, how do people just go from,
Well, fundamentally, the government is in the media that works for ratings as well. They're always looking to expand their domain. And so they're always looking for the perfect crisis for you to give up a little bit more of your individual freedoms and a little bit more power, money, and control for them. And it's not just the government. I mean, it's businesses, it's everything. And COVID alarmism is one of the most profitable industries ever conceived of for politicians, for the media.
Second only to Trump hate.
Yeah, second only to Trump hate. And even for, so-called scientists, right? More than any other issue, COVID alarmism combined with mass scientific ignorance
this is
gives people the perfect legitimacy. For politicians, it's money, power, and control. For the media, it's shocking headlines. For activists, it's a tremendous fundraising venture, and a way to feel like a virtuous defender of public safety.
Yeah, my biggest problem has been this metamorphosis of science from a process wherein you hypothesize, you experiment, you put out results, those get hypothesized and experimented on. It's a continuing series of questioning and doubting until you can can no longer disprove what you're trying to disprove. And all of a sudden now science has replaced basically God in these people's lives to the point where if you question the science, it's like, what is the science?
Yeah, that's like the opposite of actual scientific
Exactly.
attitude. A scientific attitude is to question everything.
Exactly.
You know, I'm just stunned like by the people who just lost curiosity about what's actually going on. And it's like, even if you question something, like they tell you conspiracy theorist, or they call you, you know, far right. I was like, hold on a second. You know, I've lived through this before. I'm just asking one question. You know,
No, how dare you?
How?
And
Yeah.
again, I want to emphasize there is a corrupt bargain here. We just had Lucky Lacado in the comment section ask why is there no more discussion of herd immunity, natural immunity? And again, because alternative therapeutics and natural immunity is a threat to the profits of big pharma, which is getting funded from the government. So if they can mandate the shot, and if they can discredit any other alternative to that, it puts a dent in their money. That's
I don't think they thought that the American people were going to buy it so easily.
Oh, I didn't think that.
I think that they legitimately thought if they tried when it first came out, there was tons of talk of herd immunity because that was all we had, and I don't think they legitimately thought the American people would just dispense with the notion of natural immunity like so easily, and they were surprised. They're like, oh my gosh, wait a second, they're truly believing the only way around this is a vaccine? What more can we do?
That's why I feel very worried, because the culture is changing, the culture of free speech.
Yes, it is. You are listening to the Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC. Don't worry, freedom of speech is still alive and well here.
Liberty Revolt Media and Be the Change on Facebook.com. What's up, guys?
If you're willing, when it's over, do you want to stay and answer like a couple more questions for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, just a couple more that we have there?
On the live stream?
Yeah, just a little bonus segment when we're done.
At exactly 5:58:50, the radio show will end. We will keep the live stream going and cater exclusively to our social media audience, which treats us so well.
You don't have to look like so like sexily into the camera, Bucky.
But you know, frankly,
you're sexy enough without the face.
You guys get me going. You really do. You make me feel.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can all agree he definitely has a face for radio, doesn't he?
Yeah, I've decided I'm growing out my hair. I know. I've got Frankenstein's haircut right now. It's really dorky. I've decided I'm finally going to let my hair grow out
like
again.
your hair.
Yeah, there we go.
And I'm really looking forward to it because I know that the whole growing out stage is going to be a nightmare for me.
So you have very straight hair.
I was watching the Man with No Name trilogy this last week. It's a Clint Eastwood. It's like the Clint Eastwood's some of his best movies he ever did. And I was like, I'm gonna have Clint Eastwood's hair. That's what I'm gonna do. Just you grow it out and you trim it right here. And you let it grow out up here, and it's like nice and neat down there. Like,
you know what I realized?
Clint Eastwood is the most beautiful man who's ever lived.
I have a big flat forehead.
I would agree.
I have a big flat forehead that needs to be like. I don't look good with a buzz cut. I need a haircut that like accommodates my facial structure.
Since we're going to do bonus questions on the bonus segment.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but okay.
He has a very flat foot. Look at that. It's so flat. But no, so since we're going to do.
That's because of the hat.
No, it's also.
We ugly.
Yeah, we're just ugly people.
I don't agree. I think you guys are, adorable. American young man.
You're cute, Bucky. So since we're gonna do bonus questions after the radio, do we want to do? I'm interested in the CCTV headlines. Just reading a couple off for the last bit. The last segment. Just read off some headlines.
Okay, sure.
You got them pulled up, Buck?
Yes, I have them pulled up. They're ready to go.
I was fluent at Arabic at one point as well.
You were?
Yes.
Wow, we should talk to you.
Yeah.
Wait, I need my hat. Or do I? I don't know. You tell me.
Can you not hear yours?
That's Arabic.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
That's what made me think about it.
And if you would be so kind, you could record one for us as well.
Oh, my Arabic is so rusty.
No.
In Chinese, we have one in Arabic.
Of course. Okay. I would. Yeah.
For our radio listeners, by the way, we have intro music with languages all around the world. So
yeah, we've just been dancing to nothing.
So I want to read off some headlines from the official CCTV for those in the live stream. That is China's official media platform on YouTube, Facebook. I want you to give me a one-word response. According to CCTV, quote, sense of normality returning in Kabul following a Taliban takeover.
Can I use a swear word?
Not on the radio, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm just gonna use the short for it. BS.
My God, that makes sense of normalcy returns to Kabul. Is that a Babylon Bee headline?
No, that is CCTV. Taliban promise amnesty and all rights for women.
Oh. Okay.
These are like
I'm literally out of words.
Like, what the heck? That's real? That's real?
Most Kabul residents stay at home in obedience with demands as Taliban take over.
I mean, that probably is happening. That one's not as crazy as the other one. It kind of contradicts the other ones, though. Like, why are things getting so much better and everyone has to stay home now?
That's the double think. Yeah, it's like a lot of contradiction.
That's actually kind of interesting. How many of these headlines are going to kind of contradict with each other as you go through? Because those first two would contradict with the third.
I don't know. I only took snapshots of or screenshots, me, of these headlines on one day, and it's been a couple days since. So I'm going to try to.
It's interesting.
Try to update my list here. It is amusing watching the comment section because there is the Chinese hired, dedicated, pro-communist commenters on every single video, spewing such. Let's see if I can find a good one here. Spewing such wonderful polemic as.
We call them Wu Mao.
The government
50
that the U.S. set up was garbage. The former president took all the money for trucks and a small plane were loaded with cash and fled the country like a coward. He took so much cash, even some cash were scattered on the runway. So-called freedom. Eyes roll.
Have
Ashraf you been to China yourself to experience how the real citizens live their lives? You don't know a thing about the politics in China. Yes, I agree. They don't have any voting rights. Or who cares? Majority of the citizens in China are farmers or factory workers. Some living in rural countryside can't even read or write. All they want is prosperity and living safe in the country. They don't care about politics. All they want is a government that can help them to get out of poverty. You should visit Shanghai, China, the city of the future. I myself live in U.S. and I don't feel safe anywhere freedom is. People here can beat us up due to Asian hate crimes anytime they want. Freedom is BS.
Yeah, that's
I've seen that paragraph before. They've copied and pasted it.
For real?
I've seen that. The Trump money with the truck scattered. I've seen all that before.
Because Ashraf Ghani did do that in Afghanistan on his way out. He took all the money with him, but that was the Afghan president. But they're saying that was the American president did that.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, jeez. Somewhere in the Chinese community. It's like the Wu Mao's, the 50 centers.
Yeah. Well, you guys have joined us today on 1360 KHNC. This has been the Liberty Revolt. Sorry, Buck. Thank you so much, Omani, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
If you guys want a little bonus section, go follow us on the Facebook page. We will have 10 to 15 more minutes at facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media. Come ask some questions.
And we love you guys. We hope you have the most wonderful day, even after having to sit through the Red Rift. My sincerest apologies.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do a couple more. Is there a couple questions up? Thank you so much for coming.
Guys, if you were listening,
how was it? Did you enjoy it?
I don't know. How did I do?
You did great. Fantastic.
Yeah. We'll ask the Red Rift guys what they thought. Okay. And we'll ask our social media audience guys watching the live streams, if you enjoyed Amani, please give us a like and a comment giving her your gratitude and everything.
Awesome. Brokenhearted.
Oh,
but the Red Rift loves you guys.
You'll notice I didn't show you how to operate the hot buttons.
Yeah, I noticed. Smart move. Very smart move. He knew what he was doing.
It was awesome. Okay. That was a really good interview.
Yeah.
She's got a lot of information on it. So we're actually, do you guys have any questions you want to ask? We're still doing a live stream right now. If you want to ask
come in,
anything.
guys, come in.
I know I got to go here in like 5 minutes.
Those of you observing, these are the guys from the Red Rift. They are on the radio show just before us.
That's it, man. Hi, I'm Kavika.
That's Kavika. We got
And
Austin.
Austin's off to the side.
He was supposed to be on with us the other day, but his internet decided to be.
Well, it wasn't my internet. I actually had my food truck slide off the side of the road.
Oh.
So
yeah, sure.
Wow.
He's just like, I don't believe you.
Sounds like propaganda to me.
But yeah, was there a question for her? Do you guys have any questions you want to ask her?
Janine says, "Great job, all of you." So, round of applause for us.
Thank you.
I am
Thank you.
tremendous. It's true. Yeah.
Thank you.
Pat.
Thank you.
But yeah, so.
the absolute stench of humility in
sorry.
this room is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, trust me, I had to freshen it up after you. Hey,
Oh, I'm sure.
Suni's hopping on.
Heck yeah.
Who's that?
Suni is my dear friend who I absolutely cherish. What's up, Suni? How you doing?
Hold on. I'm famous. Did somebody just say who's that?
Yeah, that was me.
I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
Famous.
No, I was
That's
getting
not
ready
a
for my
humility
own
check.
show and I saw you guys were live, so I just figured I would watch and see what you guys are doing. So hello.
Hello.
And
Hey, when are you gonna hop on with us again? Hey, can you fix this camera angle so that it's on me?
Oh my gosh, shut the hell up. No, don't do
No,
anything.
because Suni can't see me.
there you go.
We don't want to see you.
There
We
you
would
go.
rather have our guests
Zoom
in there.
in on you too.
Yeah, zoom in. Zoom in.
Would you like that? Would you
Get
like
this
that?
cheeser right here. Suni, when are you going to join me on the interwebs for a
I'm
conversation?
gonna listen. I've been busy.
Oh,
I've been busy.
Life of
I've
a
been
tell me
going-
what it is to me.
Yeah.
what are you doing Monday, Suni?
Monday, I have
Hey.
a Maddie show and I have a show with Oscar
Good on
of
you.
Blue.
Well,
I have a lot. I'm booked and busy, so I'm so serious. If I'm not on Instagram, then I'm doing something with my kids. I got something
Aw.
going on at home. So when I have a moment, like today, I have a moment, and I'm going to like blow the lid off of the left's narrative regarding men being able to have babies. I'm just saying, Jen Psaki let the cat out the bag. We're gonna have fun with that show. Me and Casey are gonna go live.
Yeah, we'll be there.
well, you got to be on
Check it
one of
out.
ours here Sunday, Suni.
Yeah,
I will.
We're every Monday
Um,
night, every Friday night. And, you know, if you ever text me and say, here's the StreamYard link, get your ass on here, I'll be there.
Okay,
I
I got you.
I had a bonus question I was hoping to ask Amani. I asked you a little bit beforehand too. So, what percentage, or how big of a role do you think, how the West contributed to the downfall of the Chinese culture through the introduction of opium, leading into what Japan did to China in World War II? How much of an impact do you think that had on the Chinese people being so willing to move over to communism as opposed to fighting for something like, say, the American capitalist system?
Well, I'd have to say, history was ugly. It was, they did a lot. The Westerner, especially the British people and the French, who basically started the Opium War and, broke the feudal system that lasted thousands of years. They did a lot, and and the Japan, of course, the Sino-Japan War. We had several wars, especially the last one that was part of the World War II, that really contributed to creating hate, creating nationalism,
And a commitment to the
creating
Communist Party.
commitment to our own people. So when the Chinese communists became, they just devoted themselves to the whole cause, to fend off foreign invaders, to build our own nation. And that's why they walked into that into that later would prove to be hell, with their eyes wide open. And yeah, that was part of the history, and I'm not going to deny it.
Yeah.
The Westerners did contribute a large part to that.
Large enough portion that when
Yeah.
it came down to we're having a revolution, which government are we coming to?
Uh-huh.
They were like, not there.
And to this day, I mean, in many ways, Japan is a glove over the American fist.
Mhm.
We are over there. We do surround China with
Yep. We use Japan and
136
South Korea.
bases, I think it is. And well, we just lost our bases in Afghanistan, so I suppose that number has gone down.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you were to stand on the tallest building in Beijing and look out at the island of Guam, it looks like it's going to sink into the ocean with how many American missiles are on it.
Well,
You look at what we did in the Marshall Islands with our nuclear testing on the people who lived there, essentially. They're still dealing with the ramifications. You look at what we did to Japan and how much control and influence we have over Japan now. And yeah, I can understand why, from the perspective of some people, people living up in China and hearing that history and those things would have a sense of fear that would help legitimize their government.
but here comes the rub. Like America has never truly invaded China.
No.
China was always invaded and colonized and divided up by the Europeans.
In fact,
America actually helped China in the Sino-Japanese
yeah,
War.
I
And we've
wonder
invested
how that's.
That's
so
the
much
double
money.
think.
Did they hide the fact that it was in fact America that came in and beat the tar out of Japan and in fact destroyed Japan
They
to the
don't.
point where
They just disconnect. Like the people are so like used to just taking it in whatever they were told instead of connecting the dots. Like I did not connect the dots. Like when I was a kid, I knew that we were all told America dropped nuclear bombs on Japan and ended the war. And that's when the World War II actually ended. But I never connected the dots. I never thought, hey, if the Americans didn't do that to Japan, maybe we would be speaking Japanese today.
Yeah.
I never thought of that until I came to America.
I'm surprised there wasn't a similar level of a similar reception of the Americans coming in and liberating China of Japan as it was when the Americans liberated
all.
Europe of the Nazis, because especially with what the Japanese people were doing to China and how you would think that, and I can understand why the Chinese government would then try to remove that from history, because if people understand that the reason why our greatest enemy is not dominating our countries because the Americans came in and just wiped them off, literally wiped their military off the earth. They did not have a military for 50 years after that. They were not allowed to have one. And so I wonder how important and necessary the Chinese Communist Party saw it to remove America's role in that. Otherwise, people might have a level of reverence for what America did.
I think they might have. I don't know about now, because when I was growing up, it was like 30 years ago. History books, that was after the 80s. China was opening up, and it was a very different time. That's why Tiananmen protests happened, because people were, it was reviving. The culture was revived. People were thinking about new ideas, accepting freedom of speech at the time.
And China was opened up to tremendous amounts of foreign investment, primarily from the United States.
Oh, yes.
And we began exporting tremendous amounts of culture. That's the United States' number one export is culture.
But my question is more pertaining to, at what point did the Chinese Communist Party decide America was the evil ones, and therefore we have to remove their role in eliminating Japan from history?
I think I can answer that question. Of course, as soon as Mao took power, because he wanted to establish complete communist rule. So after he died, China started opening up. That's when Deng Xiaoping, he took over, and he was very, very American friendly.
Yeah.
That's why, the whole 80s was the greatest time in PRC history. Since we're so open, people were debating, but up to Tiananmen happened. Tiananmen protests happened. Deng Xiaoping realized we cannot give people all these ideas of freedom. We cannot give people all these ideas of, debates, open debates, and exchanging ideas and opinions. So ever since then, they started to, tightening their rope again, so to speak.
That makes sense. Because the perspective I look at it from is that, the Chinese Communist Party it is necessarily the case that they have to convince their people that the American system is wrong, because to adopt it would be, you can't adopt the American system without adopting the American values, which would be the greatest threat to the Chinese Communist Party. And additionally, America, if you look at Chinese history, you can't find the instance when America did something actually horrible to China.
No.
You legitimately cannot.
Yeah. Can I tell you something? I when I found out, I was shocked. I only found it out after I came to America. That was Xinhua News. Xinhua News is the biggest state-run, propaganda machine in China. But it was founded in 1933, so before the Chinese Communist Party took over. So I found an article in the archive of Xinhua News that was written in 1941 that said America has been our best friend ever since its its establishment. I was shocked. This was written by Xinhua News before it took power. So so that was like when I kind of had a small epiphany. It's like, people, people before they take power and people after. I'm not talking about just politicians. I'm talking about humanity as a whole. Before they have power and after they have power are two different things.
Yeah, right. When you're trying to take power, you are the counterculture. You are like
you're the rebels.
Yeah. And then you get in power and it's crush anyone who disagrees. Like you completely pursue an opposite set of policies.
It's because
it's human nature.
Vladimir Lenin described it in the Bolshevik revolution, right? You have your revolutionaries, right? And there's a small subset of the population who is always going to be looking to revolt, and they are the ones that have to be the catalyst for the revolution. They're the ones that have to inspire everyone else. They are the vanguard, if you will, of the revolution. They're also the first people you have to kill.
Absolutely.
Because they're always going to be revolutionary. You're in power, they're going to hate how you're doing it too, and they're going to be the ones that are going to fight the revolution. They have to be the first ones that are killed once you take power. In America, you can't do that. So the American they cannot capitulate to them because you can't eliminate them once they get their way, kind of deal. But as far as when you look at like China and stuff like that, the revolutionaries, they don't understand it at the time. They never understand it at the time, but they are the reason the government changes, and they are always going to be the biggest threat, and they are always going to be the first one that is put up against the wall. And Vladimir Lenin talked about that.
So we have a question that has been sitting in our comment section for a minute. Brent asks, from her point of view, is America becoming more socialist?
I hate to say it, but I'll have to say yes. It's from my perspective, I have seen too many similarities, even just in the last 2 or 3 years, since just I have been finding it so difficult to process why this is happening. And the only thing that I can think of is that this is just human history, part of human history. This has never happened to America. Yeah, this has happened to. Marx was a German guy. He was a European. He was a Westerner. This strange thing about us against Westerners. Communism is a Western idea, but communism has never really truly been implemented. In its practical form, in the Western world. But it's being implemented in so many other countries.
Because along the way, you have to give someone power. And as soon as you give someone power to control others, they use it to their own ends. And so all you do by pursuing communism is consolidate power.
Absolutely.
It always produces the exact opposite of what the revolutionaries are trying to accomplish.
Absolutely. And power always starts to concentrate into smaller groups of people.
The Chinese Communist Party is 6% of the population.
Yeah, 6% of the population, 94% of the population just obey. Yeah. They just obey. Why? Because they believe them like God.
And you see it in every single regime. If you have to maintain the support of the people. You can either do that through completely capitulating to the people at all times and actually trying to it's gonna block her. You're just oopsies. So there's two ways to do it. Either you actually legitimately do put forth full-face communism. There is no state. Everybody is equal. Everybody's entitled to everything. Or you figure out who are the people that we need that if we can gain the favor of, we can dominate the culture.
And that's the culture, yes.
And that's who the Chinese Communist Party is. All of that 6%, they have great lives, they have great money, they have access to everything they could ever want. But you say it's a party of the people, and it's for the best people.
Yes, we were told. This is really funny, because when I was a kid, we were all required to wear the red scarf, and we raise our hands or look at the flag, and we say a slogan. The slogan is people's interest is above everyone, is about everything else. I asked a question. I was like 7 years old. Am I not one of the people? Like, what does it mean when you say people's interest is above everyone? So I am one of the people, right? So I'm putting my interest above everyone else. I got hushed. I was like, that's a bad kid. You're not allowed to question these things. So it's like, I mean, that's the culture. They create this culture first, and then
And
they take over.
And it cultivates people that no longer have loyalty to the people. They have loyalty, their loyalty now becomes the party, to the point where they're like, because everything is so great up there, and it's never technically shut off to them fully, unless they stand against the party. That other 94% theoretically thinks they can at some point join that 6%, which inspires them to, go along with it even more, whether they believe it or not. And eventually you start believing it.
Yeah, this is why I'm so worried when I saw what happens like after COVID started. It's like people are like so hostile towards other people now. Yeah. It's like, trust your neighbors. Why they're like, I know people who are like going out and saw neighbors not wearing masks outside. They are like, oh, they don't care about other. I'm like, what? Why are you turning on each other so quickly? Why are you not turning on the government, questioning the government's decisions, and quickly? Why are you being so hostile instead of being friendly and helping each other out instead? That was the true American spirit that I came here for. Like in the time of crisis, we help each other. Yeah. We don't need the government to take care of ourselves. We can take care of ourselves.
It's a manufactured crisis right now. That's the thing, is like, if it was a true crisis, if there was something truly going on, there wouldn't be this level of politicization. But when you actually look at the facts and statistics, the only conclusion you can come to is, okay, at this point, it's all about the power. It's all about the politics. It isn't a true crisis anymore. Yeah. They're going to continue to paint it that way because fear, the number one concern of all people, like the base level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is safety, security. And so government thrives. The moments when government is able to expand the most are when fear is at its highest, because a government, it represents the monopoly on violence. The government is big, the government is strong. If they say they can keep me safe, I see that they can keep me safe.
Right.
And same with the so-called free media, right? They're not in the business of winning elections. They're in the business of ratings. And as a human psychological phenomenon, we are more susceptible to fear than almost any other emotion. And it's pretty simple why.
Yes.
You can only be so happy, but you could be totally all the way dead, and you can suffer a whole lot along the way. So obviously, in order to survive, we have to be very sensitive to fear. And the media picks up on this. So they peddle what sells. And what sells is outrage. What sells is fear. Yeah. The media are not in the business of telling you the truth or giving you a realistic perspective of what's actually going on in the world. They're in the business of showing you something that's going to keep you staring at the screen long enough to see the advertisers that are paying them.
Yeah.
And eventually it becomes, you live in fear, and you live in fear of everyone around you for irrational reasons.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt back in China. It's like I go outside, I feel so hostile towards anyone because I lived in fear all my life.
But it's really weird to me because, like, when SARS-1 came out, the tactic was prevent fear. So it's weird. It's because in that case, because the Chinese Communist Party controls everything, they now need to squash the fear, right? They need everybody to think that, it's all going great all the time.
That's
In
right.
America, because the government doesn't have that same level of control,
They're creating that.
Yeah, they need to create a reason for the expansion, which fear is. So it's like you have two different government styles, two different tactics that are both working to achieve the same goal using entirely different methods that in the end provide this.
Government always, regardless of a socialist government, an American government, whatever the government is, fundamentally the government is that entity which tries to maintain a monopoly on violence, and they're always looking to expand that. The different structure just means what roadblocks are in the way.
Yeah, you got to talk about interest too. So people always talk about the government cares what's in our best interest, or we're in Afghanistan because it's in our best interest.
Only to the point that it protects their best interest.
No, the government's best interest is the government.
Right. So when I mentioned that solution, that solution gesture, I forgot to mention was that. We were told like the party represents the best interests of people.
Yeah.
That's what we were always told. So I asked, am I one of the people? That's right. And so what the teacher actually told me is like, okay, you're a bad kid, but you are part of the people, but the party represents you. a party represents the best interest because you don't know what's best for yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I
Right.
was a kid. Yeah.
Every time a leftist says that they
We
want
know
to
better
give the
than you.
power to the people, they're saying they want to give power to a bunch of bureaucrats to run your life.
It's because there's been a conflation of the government with the people. People think the government has done a great job, and Murray Rothbard talks about this. It's the first line of his essay, Anatomy of the State. He talks about how people have this idea that we are the government. If that is the case, then every person that Mao killed in part of his Cultural Revolution killed themselves because they were part of the government and the government killed them. Therefore, they were killing themselves. We know that's not the case. And in the end, that is because the government is not the people. We, the people, are in fact ourselves.
Yeah.
The government is something that's always trying to encroach and dig further into my life.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because, like, for a long time, I had no idea what government meant. Because, like, all my life in China, government was just treated like God. Everybody was just worshipped it. It's like, government says this, you got to do it. We just took that as a matter of course. And then I think way into after I started working in radio, I started to think, what is the government? The government is a bunch of people, just like me.
But
they're
a gang of thieves.
Yeah,
Yes, it is a gang of thieves.
It's like they're like, how come they get to decide, what's best for me? Like, they don't even know me. I've never even met them.
Have you ever read Murray Rothbard's Anatomy of the State?
No.
I really suggest that you read it. It's a wonderful. So he is one
It's
of the.
only like 100 pages.
It's 65 pages.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
Oh, really?
It's very short. It's a very
Okay.
short essay that he wrote, Anatomy of the State, and it basically just attacks this idea of a legitimate state. It basically poses the question: if a government, it says the claim it makes is a government is not consensual. No, you don't actually consent to your government.
Right.
And so therefore, like, how can it be a force for good if you were never consenting to it? Is what it comes down to is that the government it is in its best interest for you to think that it is always going to be, it is a necessary inevitability.
What is the government in practice? How does it get its revenue? How is it established? How does it
Maintain its power.
preserve itself?
Yeah.
What are the inherent tendencies in any institution of power, such as a government?
And I think if you read it, you'll be sitting there like, what he's describing is
You may not turn into an anarchist like this guy, but you may be someone like me who goes, okay, we need to always be skeptical
Absolutely.
of the government at
that's what
every
I
single level.
believed, yeah.
And you need to always be watching it and holding it accountable. And you need to be allowed to speak,
Mhm.
and you need to be allowed to protest.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's what I
it's-
believe. Yeah. And I after I came to America, I realized, what the function of governments is to protect people's rights. It's not to run people's lives or help people, or tell people what to do. But in China, it's completely different. And here I see that culture changing. Like, people are starting to rely on government more and more.
Yeah.
They start to think the government's role is to take from the rich and give it to the poor, and then some people do believe that, and that's a very worrisome.
And here's the problem with progressives, and why I looked at both, having sympathy for some of the issues that progressives point out.
Mhm.
Why I decided that I was a conservatarian, which is what I consider myself.
Mhm.
There's no limiting principle to the left.
No.
Mhm.
There is no end goal.
I understand what the conservatives want, because there's an end point. They point to the Constitution. They say this is the legitimate role of government. Anything beyond that is illegitimate.
Yep.
They believe it's a necessary evil only to promote, to protect your basic freedoms from being tyrannized from other
Absolutely.
entities. But beyond that, it's totally illegitimate. It needs to be left in the hands of the people. For the left, there is no limiting principle. Their core belief is that the government is a legitimate tool to solve the world's injustices.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Here's the problem. There's no limit to injustice in the world. They can always turn it goes from outright murder and aggression, right, to subjugation, to keeping down through economic means, through racism, to all the way down to the point of microaggression.
Yeah, to the point
so
where your hand movements are oppressive.
Right.
Wow.
Where
Yes. I'm an oppressor. You
Yeah,
know,
no.
that's
Like
Yeah,
at
you might
Colorado
trigger
State.
somebody.
At Colorado State, when you're in the Senate chambers, you have to do this. So I started clapping at one of my meetings, and I lied about it. Right? They go, "We don't clap here." I'm like, excuse me. My dad used to snap at me like that before he would beat my ass when he was drunk. So I prefer clapping because I get triggered by snaps. And they had this conundrum. Obviously, it's a lie,
Yeah,
right? My dad is one. But it's like, I do it on purpose because I'm like, let's put you in a position where you have to realize just how asinine what you're asking for is.
So the whole notion of injustice is such a subjective
It is.
term that there's no limit to the expansion of government. What the expansion of government translates to in reality isn't more power to the people. It's more power to the bureaucrats, more power to that gun. Mao Zedong boiled his political philosophy down to a single phrase. Do we all know it?
The power comes out of the barrel of the gun.
Political power, grows out of the barrel of the gun.
Yep. And he knew he was 100% right about it. And he did what he had to do first and foremost, which is kill your intellectuals, kill the people that are going to come up with the philosophy.
Disarm people.
Get rid of the guns from the common folk, and make sure that the common folk can't be armed with ideas by the smartphone,
and make sure they can't communicate with each other in a way that destabilizes our regime.
So
isolation. Another people, when people are so isolated from each other, they become so unfriendly to each other, and then they won't come together and to be organized. And that's why this is another thing that worries me about COVID. It's like so many people are choosing to just not socialize anymore. They're all just working from home. They choose to get all their information from a couple of media outlets.
From Don Lemon, who really cares about you.
Don Lemon.
Don Lemon.
Yeah, they don't talk to their friends or families anymore. It's like
they want to be told. They don't want to do the research themselves. It's like they don't want to be like us, where I have an idea that I don't believe that COVID is as bad as it is, and potentially I could get it and die, and I might have been wrong, but I wouldn't have ended up being it, because I always acknowledge that there's a small chance. It's like they want to get rid of any and all responsibility they could ever have for their actions. That's like the entire platform of the left is. If you look at everything they advocate for, it's how can we remove the consequences from your actions? How can we make it so that you do not have to suffer from your decisions? Abortion up until basically point of birth, so that a mother doesn't have to live with the fact that she said yes to a man that can't provide for her. You have welfare to make up for the fact that people aren't getting strong family, are trying to get away from the responsibility of having families. Like everything that the left tries to do. College, right? I went to college and got a theater degree. Now I have $100,000 in debt, and I can't my degree is useless, but I was told that to college. No, you're the dumbass that decided to get a theater degree. That's the consequence of your actions.
And that brings out the worst part of human nature. That's and it's like laziness, hostility towards other people, and then like all these and arrogance. It's like they are so firm in their belief that even if you put it in front of their eyes, like I got caught white presenting at my work meeting because I shared my personal experience back in China. I said, because I was,
so racist.
walking hand in hand with my white boyfriends back in China, people would,
you're not allowed to have these opinions as a Chinese lady.
They would spit on me. So that I think, reverse, we were talking about racism. So I was like, reverse racism against white people does exist. Maybe not exist to the same degree in this country, but in China, it does exist. People spat on me for walking hand in hand with my white boyfriend.
There's a Chinese laundry detergent commercial wherein a dude gets put in the washer black and comes out Chinese.
Chinese. Yeah. That's a very famous one. So I mentioned that I got hushed up and I got called white presenting. I was told to think about my white privilege. So this is all madness. It's abandoning all logic, common sense, basic knowledge. It's just out of control.
Yeah, it's insane. I had a kid not a kid. This dude was a grad student, right? He was a grad student in political science, and he was talking to me about systemic racism. And I said, I think that that we have a white privileged society is you look at the data and it doesn't back it up, such as the fact that Asians are the highest earners. And he goes, "Where'd you find that information?" I go, like so many places, like department of there's like the government side. He goes, "Show it to me." I was like, "Wait a second, are you telling me you hold this opinion and you've never even done the research yourself?" And he's all, "That's not what I'm saying." I'm like, look, I know I got it off a government website that reports this, and I've seen it a bunch of other places. The fact that you haven't gone to the, I remember I showed him the statistic on I think it was the CDC. It was either CDC or the, it was one of the other stupid. There's so many agencies that I don't keep track of them anymore. But I showed him it on the actual government website, and he goes, "Huh?" I was like, "You've never freaking looked at this? Like, you're a political science, like, you're going for a political science master's degree. You hold these opinions about systemic racism in our country, and you can't even tell me, like, the simplest, one of the first questions you're going to ask, oh, really? Do white people earn the most money?
Yeah.
No."
Right. Well, and again, political science classes coming from schools that are largely subsidized by the government. What do you think those classes are going to look like? They're going to look like we're peddling the idea of injustice and you going out there and solving injustice because what can help justify the government and the expansion of government? You focusing on injustices in society.
Absolutely. Although I do think, the way to move forward, we all agree, what we see is happening. And I think moving forward is really to go out and talk to these young people.
Yes.
100%. And it's like, when we talk to people face to face, you see them as human beings. I think, I've seen so much dehumanizing in the past year, like some of my friends, they just see people as a number anymore. They throw out numbers at me, like, unvaccinated versus vaccinated. I'm like, have you ever talked to a person who's against vaccination? Have you actually talked to them face to face, listen to their reasoning, and listen to their concerns? Never. They would never do it.
They're always trying to break people down into these little subgroups, right? And here's the thing. Eventually, these alphabet people are going to get to where we're at, where the individual is the ultimate minority.
Exactly.
They're like, well, I'm a black midget with COVID and vaccine.
All I know is there's one of me and 7.9 billion not me's in the world. I am the ultimate minority.
And I think it's so important, to remind people that freedom of speech, the culture of freedom of speech is everything.
Yeah.
Like when the culture changes, everything changes. Culture changes, that means people changes. People change. It's like when enough people accept censorship.
We have to be able to criticize bad ideas, even if it offends people.
You have to be willing. It's like Jordan Peterson said in his Kathy Newman interview when she was like, "Do you think you have the right to offend people?" And he goes, "Well, yes, obviously, you think you have that right because you've been offending me in this conversation."
Exactly.
You have to be able to offend people.
So I just wonder, my training was called inclusivity, diversity, and equity, and then they hushed me up from I'm the diverse person, right? I got taught. I'm literally the first generation immigrant. I'm literally not born in this country. I'm literally Asian. And I'm literally sharing a completely different perspective and experience. And they hushed me, they told me not to share, and they called me white presenting. So I realized, okay, this was never about social justice. It's not. Never. It's all about power. It's about, silencing opposition. And what's the next step of silencing opposition? Authoritarianism.
Yep, you sound
if we allow that to happen in our culture among ourselves, then
we're toasted.
Let's not.
So I have a question on the immigration front. So we talked a little bit about Confucius Institutes, and I know a lot of our viewers are very aware of how the Chinese Communist Party tries to infiltrate our culture through subversive means such as that. So if you're unaware, listeners, the Confucius Institutes that are most likely on your children's college campuses are actually fronts for the Chinese Communist Party. If any university that's going to have Chinese students going there, it's all government. There is going to be some level of influence from the Confucius Institute. Now, I also have a roommate. In addition to Bucky and Cole, who are married to Chinese people, one of my roommates was also married to a Chinese woman. I made a joke to him where I was like, "Oh, I bet she was a spy," kind of deal, just joking with him. And he was like, no. Well, she moved back to China to go she's taking the job you formerly had. She's going to be a news anchor on one of the Chinese Communist Party's news agencies. I go, you do realize that she might not have been a spy, but at the same time, the Chinese Communist Party is not going to allow someone to go to the West and then come back and be a vocal, be the voice in the face of one of their propaganda outlets, unless they are for sure they didn't get corrupted along the way over here.
They are spies. Well, I'm not saying for 100% for sure, but when I was working at CRI, the China Radio International, they had bureaus all across the globe.
Yeah.
Every country has a China Radio International bureau, and so their job is not only to report, what was going on here. They had okay. We go into details. I could go on for days.
No, you're good.
They had
All
two
right,
sets
all
of reports.
I really would like to try to wrap this up.
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
why I was asking this last question, because like the perspective that was given to me is that not all Chinese people that are coming over here are going to be spies, but every Chinese national that comes over here with the hope of going back understands when called upon that it's their duty to kind of do what the Chinese Communist
It's not
Party said.
random. These things never happen randomly.
Yeah.
You meet a lot of Chinese immigrants like myself. We escaped from that. And if they want to go back and work for a Chinese government's organization, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah, well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you come in and talk with us, and we are definitely going to do this again because I know you are full of stories, and we probably have barely touched the surface as far as this goes. So we are definitely going to be bringing you on. Bucky, how did the viewers feel?
How did the viewers feel? If you enjoyed it, please consider going to facebook.com/Liberty Revolt Media and giving us a like and a follow. I was joking when I said dox us on Antifa blog forums. As many of you know, I've already been doxxed. I don't need it anymore, especially since when I originally started getting doxxed by Antifa, if you Googled Liberty Revolt, you would get my address because I had to register it as a business and I didn't have a business address. So I was just like, well, my address is my home address. And so, yeah, I literally had Antifa members sending pictures of my Google view house at me with Molotov cocktail emoji, mask emoji, like all of it.
You just send back gun emoji, gun emoji, gun emoji.
Well, I shot a video. We're not going to go there. We're not going to give out the link. But
Yeah, anyway, though.
If you guys did enjoy the show, please consider subscribing to the Liberty Revolt. We will not be commandeering the Be the Change platform for long, but Casey was so kind to let us utilize it to hopefully win over some of you guys. So thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah. Awesome.
Free Cash Kelly.
Free cash.
Be the change. Unite, don't fight. All of them things.
Oh. Awake, not woke. Adios, bye everybody. Are we off?